The white smoke rose above St. Peter's Square to signify more than a fresh papacy. It was a moment heavy with centuries of tradition, but charged with the uncommon energy of unheralded change. As the smoke twirled into the Roman air, onlookers in the piazza understood they were seeing more than a ritual announcement. They were seeing the dawn of something different. It signaled the coming of a man whose life was a global story, told in a voice unlike any other. His life challenged expectations and reframed the rules of spiritual leadership. Pope Leo XIV, born Robert Francis Prevost in 1955 on Chicago's South Side, had not sought Peter's chair. He lived on the edges, traveled rough roads, and gained trust with more than words, but with a quiet service. His is a story of humility and identity and the power of presence. It is a story of a life shaped as much by silence as by words. Prevost was raised in a poor Catholic neighborhood, forged by immigrant resolve, parish tradition, and street life struggle. His street was filled with languages: Spanish, Polish, Italian, and the ringing of church bells, the calls of a ball field on a summer evening, and dinner tables full of generations. The church was not an institution, it was part of the landscape. His calling wasn't wrought in a life-changing moment of spiritual awakening, but in the mundane rhythm of serving at the altar, local masses, and witnessing why we believe. Chicago taught him discipline. Chicago gave him an unshakable backbone. He discovered early on that it was okay to roll up his sleeves and live out his faith. But it was Peru that shaped his soul. In the 1980s, as a young Augustinian priest, he came to northern Peru's Chulucanas Valley, a region far from cameras, comfort, or fame. The roads were cracked and dusty. Political violence, destitution, and remoteness characterized the region. He did not come as a hero. He came as a brother. He lived in simple rooms. He walked miles. He ate at the tables of the poor, heard their language, shared their silence, and remained. Over time, his priestly life became indistinguishable from the lives of the people. They did not perceive him as American. They perceived him as theirs. He buried their dead, baptized their children, protested their injustices, and heard their terrors. Finally, he asked Peru to grant him citizenship, not out of status, out of solidarity, out of love, out of truth. His identity split in two: born American, adopted by Peru. More than anything else, however, his priesthood became universal, not theoretically, but in blood and earth. The Eucharist he brought was the same, but the hands holding it were calloused with local dust. No longer a foreigner, no longer a traveling priest, part of the earth now. And yet, on the other side of the missionary trenches, another door opened. In 2001, Prevost was elected Prior General of the Global Augustinian Order, a centuries-old group committed to humility, common life and life together, and serious theological reflection. He led the global body through 40 nations for 12 years. He did not rule from Rome, he traveled, he heard, he was present. He spent his nights in plain cells, prayed in multiple languages, and broke bread with friars from Manila to Nairobi. He took the world's concerns in his bag and brought back stories that few high-ranking clergy ever get to hear. His leadership did not pursue modernity or romanticize tradition. He moved between the two, slowly, steadily, mindfully. The same discernment that drove him through Peruvian villages informed how he led chapters through conflicts around the world. He was not about control. He was about communion. He brought individuals together not by fiat, but by presence. His time as Prior General was filled with gentle reforms, renewed callings in abandoned corners of the world, and a peaceful sense of stability when the world was changing around the Church. What is remarkable about Leo XIV is not his CV, it's how completely human he was in the process. He still picked up a tennis racket. In Peru, he'd arranged to play with local children on the court itself, using it as a classroom on patience and persistence. He played barefoot on some days, laughing when he flubbed shots, exchanging high fives and not words of instruction. Winning wasn't important. Showing up was. Moving together. Teaching without sermoning. Laughing without barriers. He brought the same spirit to church meetings. Joy was part of holiness, he believed. He remained devoted to his childhood baseball club, the Chicago White Sox. To others, it might appear trivial. What it represents, however, is a story of origin, of determination, of steadfast optimism in the face of long probability. In Rome itself, he would glance away and smile at scores of games, sporting a subdued symbol of home underneath layers of Vatican protocol. Not nostalgia, not rootedness. The Sox cap in his dresser drawer was a reminder of who he was prior to the titles and the cassocks. He also spoke in several languages: English, Spanish, Italian, French, Latin, Quechua. Not academic, however. This was pastoral. He used words as a means of connecting, not to impress. In Peru, he wouldn't even use translators. He insisted on hearing the pain and the joy themselves. To speak to a person in their own language was to pay their soul a compliment. When he spoke in Quechua, to elderly men and women who had never heard a priest utter a word in their tongue, some cried. He heard as much with the heart as with the ears. These things, a tennis racket, a baseball hat, fluent Quechua, are not footnotes. They are the center of his leadership. They are a man who lived close to others, who never acted out authority, who perceived holiness as much as in walking with the overlooked. He never lost his ability to be moved, to be astonished, to hold his tongue before suffering. And on a particular day, the conclave elected him. The choice was swift. No grand standoff, no politics. The cardinals did not wish to elect a showman. They desired a shepherd, a man who had lived his life unobtrusively in service, who had led a global order with peace and had cradled the dying in spaces most bishops would never enter. They desired a man whose life already testified to holiness in secret places. His election was historic. The first American pope, the first Augustinian, but the deeper change was spiritual. This wasn't a matter of geography. This was a matter of tone. The Catholic Church, damaged by scandal, division, and a sort of institutional weariness, elected someone not because he was driven by ambitions, but because he was genuine. A man whose leadership had always rested on accompaniment more than on commanding. Leo XIV does not speak of reform with bravado. He does it by referring back to fundamentals: presence, compassion, accompaniment. His first months as Pope have already been different. No declarations, just little acts of kindness, walking by himself through Vatican courtyards, embracing a disabled pilgrim, recalling a guard's name, stopping to pray before meetings. These are not gestures, they're soul habits. Within the Holy See, they talk of a change, not structural, but of mood. More listening and less commanding. More pauses and less performing. He wakes up each morning in silence, prays before making a decision, goes out walking unattended. And all around the world, Latin America and Africa and Canada, bishops and laymen alike sense a shift. Not because of anything he does say, but the way he does it. They remember someone from long ago, a carpenter, a teacher, a friend. His papacy is not thunder. His is echo, not show, but substance. He keeps the church humble, He reminds the world that power is hollow without humility, that leadership starts with hearing, that greatness doesn't come in gold, but by treading dirty roads, using borrowed tongues and returning time and again to places most important. He does not tweet mercy. He demonstrates it. He does not campaign to change. He does. This is more than a pope. It's a presence, not a strategist, not a celebrity, but a witness. One who smells like the sheep and recalls the taste of village bread and never ceased to be Father Bob, the name spoken in the hills of Peru, still born in the hearts of those who knew him first. Now, the world refers to him as Leo XIV. When the world is noisy, his silence speaks. In an era of spectacle, his humility shines. Pope Leo XIV doesn't crave attention, but his life demands consideration. He shows the world and the Church itself that power rooted in service and born of lived life still has meaning. That showing up is more revolutionary than shouting. That the quietest path is often the most faithful path ahead. His is not a story of exile or leadership. His is a story of the way he walks, together with others and never solo. A man who was shaped by Peruvian roads and Chicago streets now wears the burden of a global church on shoulders honed by service and not by aspiration.